Hello everyone, this is Joe Armstrong and the Power Systems Virtual User Group for March, and today we're going to have the SME Roundtable. So before we get into that, just to let you know, what I did was I forgot to set the recording before during the intro. So I'm redoing this intro, and then all the meat of the presentation was recorded though, so then I'll just stitch these together. But to get to the intro, a couple of things that I wanted to say is this is my last VUG. I've been with IBM for 28 years. I'm retiring. Last day will be next week, end of March. So I've been doing a technical specialist job for 15 years. Before that, I was in development. I was a software engineer and an architect and things in development. But I've been doing this job for 15 years and started doing the VUG webinars about 2 months after I started being a technical specialist working with customers and part of the sales program. So I've had quite a run with IBM and quite a bit of the VUG webinars. However, I've reached that point where I've accumulated so many hobbies that work simply gets in the way, and so I've decided to retire and spend all my time on hobbies. So I'll be doing a lot more fishing, see if I can weed out the dumb trout, the ones that are stupid enough to bite on my fly or my lure. I have a lot of boards and logs that need to be turned into to fulfill their destiny as useful pieces of furniture or something or artwork. And hiking, camping, canoeing, time with the family. I have one grandson, hopefully more on the way, and so I've just got lots to do besides work. That said, you know, the VUG cannot go away. It's just there's so many people now that do it, so I'm passing the VUG off to two capable members of my current team, Ross Caniglio and Brian McDonald. Unfortunately, you're going to miss Ross and Brian on this post-webinar recording. They did get on and they introduced themselves a little bit. Ross is an old-timer with IBM. He's been around a long time. He knows a lot. He'll do great. And Brian is a newbie with IBM, started last year. Really sharp guy, and I think he'll really do well as well. And as a team, you should be well taken care of as the VUG continues. So with that, let's get on to what we were going to do today. And what I did is I have this, you know, it's the last VUG. You know, the virtual user group really isn't about me. It's about all the people who talk and share their expertise. And I just couldn't decide what to do for a last session, you know, and I didn't want to just have it on one topic. I didn't want it to be, you know, anything associated with saying goodbye to me, and we won't need to do that. But so I put together this list of subject matter experts. All of them are past VUG speakers, deep in their own expertise. They can cover a lot of space down deep, and some of them can go pretty broad as well. And so we're going to actually hear from all these people today. So what I asked them to do is each one to spend a little bit of time giving maybe their favorite tip or hint or trick or noteworthy news that is non-IBM confidential or something, whatever they wanted to do, to please keep it under 10 minutes and to just talk a little bit. Some have some more to present, some just going to chat a little bit. I set the order by randomly drawing their names out of a hat. So this is the order they came in. It has no particular order that who's important or not. And I think at this point I actually started the recording. So after this, you'll start hearing from these subject matter experts and our subject matter expert roundtable. And then we were answering questions as well in the background. So when I post this, I will try and post all the question and answer stuff that we got with it as well. So with that, let's move on. Okay, so just for everybody, so we did start the recording. For everybody out there, if you're going to ask questions, please do it in the Q&A pane. You know, you can chat, like I always say, chat away in the chat pane. But for questions, we'll keep an eye on the Q&A pane. So please ask your questions there. I don't have presentation materials put on the wiki for this. So when we're all done, anybody that had presentation materials will send it to me, and I will put it on the wiki. I mean, some have sent them to me, but I didn't get anything on the wiki yet. So I will put them all on as soon as we're done. So I've started the recording, and when we're done, I'll put a replay up for that as well. So with that, Nigel, I will go ahead and make you the presenter, if I can find you in my list here. There you are. And, you know, as we get to each person, you can kind of say a little something about yourself rather than taking up the time and going through and introducing each person. So go ahead, Nigel. I'll let you kick us off.
Okay. This should work about now. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, let's talk about Joe Armstrong then. If I'd known you only been at IBM 29 years, I'd have kicked you around a bit more, told you what to do and all that sort of thing. You started off, I think it was the AIX Virtual User Group, but then many years ago it became the Power Systems Virtual Group. And well, I should go back a bit. Look at that guy there. He's so cool, isn't he? He's a charming man. When he first met him, he just walked over and said hello, shook my hand. He could even be English, you know, he's that of a gentleman. And he's handsome, he's good looking, looks very cool in his glasses there. In IBM for a long time, you had as your IBM image was you on a canoe holding a rainbow trout, if I'm not mistaken. And I caught my first rainbow trout in the Rocky Mountains. I wasn't on the canoe, in a high up lake, a beautiful place to be. So I thought we had a lot in common. You smile a lot and you're very friendly. And I think it was at Technical University I first met you, and you wangled somebody paying, I'm not sure if it was IBM or the customer, to the most expensive restaurant in Las Vegas. I mean, it was right at the top of a 30-floor block or something. And it's a sort of restaurant where if you sneeze, you're worried about the waiter would hand you a towel and they'd put an extra $200 on the bill or something. It was really scary. And the customer said, so how is Enmon going to save me money or make me a more profitable business? And I suddenly thought, oh, I can't tell him the truth that I did Enmon for my own amusement and it's strictly for technical people. But we waffled through, and he was very happy to meet Mr. Enmon at the end of the day. And I had a fantastic meal and probably the best steak I'll ever have in my life. And if he wasn't so charming, he wouldn't have been able to trick me into running 18 sessions down through the years. It's not strictly true. I was an evangelist for a lot of our technology as it came out. So it was a two-way street. It was very useful for me that he sorted out a lot of the administration and all that. It is a reminder of the link to go and find out all these old ones. And you reckon there's 15, I said 14 plus years of all this new technology. And I really feel sorry for people that are coming into power now, because they've got 15 years worth of monthly content to look through to catch up with us old dogs that have slowly built up our experience through the years. So I did a quick backtrack, and here are all mine. And I want to go through each one of these, maybe 10 minutes each, something like that. But very quickly, workload partitions. It became containers in Linux years later, didn't it? But we're still using those with live kernel updates, where we can keep the kernel, the AIX running and update the actual kernel. N1 part 1 and part 2, that was me flying my own flag. That was before N1 actually became part of AIX. Active memory sharing, not available on Power 10. Pretty scary when you page out of one virtual machine into another one. Topaz, I give a session on Topaz. That was regarded as the enemy. But the problem was with Topaz is there's no Mr. Topaz, and nobody was telling people about all the fantastic functions that it actually does have when you actually dive in and have a look. The manual page is pretty dire. AIX active memory expansion, that's still going, still strong. Very underplayed technology, doubles your memory for practically zero price. And we recently put the 64K pages into that. There's 10 smarter technologies. That was a fun one for the technical universities and for the virtual user groups. I talked about 10 different technologies, and we all voted then on what we thought would be being used in the computer room 5 years later. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but here's the results. So the top one was SSD, solid state drives, and we were right, weren't we? That is definitely a technology moved on to NVMe now. The number 2 over on the right, Systems Director. Oh dear, how wrong could you get? But that was 3 years later taken over by Power VC, and that's providing a lot of those technologies. Most of those yellow ones there is now Power VC. Oh, I missed the FCOCEE, fiber channel over converged Ethernet, enhanced Ethernet, something like that. And that didn't take off. That was half the number of adapters and cables in our computer room. And I think the network guys and the SAN guys could never agree about who was going to lose their job when it came in, so it never was brought in. And again, a lot of those other technologies, we're still doing pre-built solutions, aren't we, with the Oracle equivalent machines and cloud on-prem and all those sorts of things are still there too. So that was pretty interesting bit of technology. Shared storage pools, I've always been a fan. I recently moved computer room from London to the south coast in the UK, and I couldn't get the shared storage pool to work. And after 10 minutes, I started phoning the developers saying, what's going on? This isn't right. And they said, have patience, Nigel. And it self-healed itself right in front of you. It said, there's no pool, there's no pool. And then it stopped saying anything. Oh, there's the pool. It worked out what was going on. We changed all the IP addresses, and it rebuilt itself on the fly. And then we have some up at the top in here for N1 classes for people just starting out. There's some more advanced N1 things at the top. So it's been great fun. My tip is use those resources that are out there. I've got a whole bunch of YouTube videos that I hope those are useful for people getting skilled up. An expert blog so I can make comments about what's going on. And those 2 virtual user groups at the bottom there, one of course is Joe's. That's it from me.
All right, nice. Well, that's awesome. And I remember all those webinars, and the top 10 one really sticks out on me. That one was a good one, and also the one where we just did the interview with you. That was kind of cool. All
right, yeah, the 20 years of N1, and we're now coming up to 25. Can you stick around, and we'll do that again?
Yeah, that'll be something that Ross and Brian can do with you.
Okay.
All right, Jackie, you're up.
Hi, everybody. So it was interesting, Nigel. I just actually went and did a count myself, and I've only done 9 sessions since 2014. So clearly, I've been lazy. But I want to start by thanking Joe, because the virtual user group and the Power VM virtual user groups, those have been probably some of the most valuable things that I've found, because I can get such a range of sessions from them. And then, of course, all the YouTube videos and the community. I find blogs very, very helpful. Today, my 5th anniversary working in IT. I actually started out on mainframes, and I switched to Unix in 1993. And in terms of tips and things like that, if you're not aware, IBM has moved both Flirt and Flirt VC into the cloud, and they now have URLs. And if you've been running Flirt VC prior to a couple of days ago, it will no longer download the right file. I'll post the links into the Q&A so that you have the new links. And other than that, I've picked up so many tips from people when I've presented who've actually reminded me about doing some things differently. Things like on a VIO server, using Update iOS for the e-fixes instead of eManager, switching to DNF from Yum when you get to AIX 7.3. And what I try to do is write up the things that I learn so that they end up in the public forum in articles, but it's also a great way for me to remember things, because if I don't put it in an article, I just don't remember it. So, those are probably my tips, is to make sure you follow the virtual user group, the blogs, the YouTube videos, and to look at places like Tech Channel and read the articles, because there's a lot of people writing some really good material. And really, that's all I have, Joe. I don't want to take up, all the time. So.
All right. So just for everybody, Jackie's, I think, the first non-IBMer I had present for the VUG, and pretty always leery about bringing in external people and all the promotion stuff. But probably also one of the smartest, most AIX savvy people out there, and just an awesome presenter with a ton of knowledge. So thanks, Jackie, for being presenting for us and doing such a great job.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just trying to post those links, and it's not letting me post a link. Have they blocked links?
Should be able to post in the Q&A, you mean?
Yeah.
Probably have to pick a question to do it on. Try the chat panel, maybe. Otherwise, you have to pick a question. You should be able to post something.
Okay, I'll post it in the chat if I can find it. All right.
Okay, Douglas, you're up next. So Doug's our I/O expert. Doug, do you have something to share? Should I make you a presenter?
I do not have anything to share, so just been busy with all kinds of other things. I would like to sort of repeat sort of what Nigel was saying, is bumping into Joe at VUG, at TechU and various other events that we've always been attending in Las Vegas and a few other cities. It was always good to see Joe. He's always smiling and in a pretty good mood, no matter how many hours we've been standing around for. So thanks, Joe, for being there, hanging out and keeping us involved, and always pushing the VUG group and helping to communicate to everybody about this whole channel, which has been fantastic. And I think it's been critical in helping us to communicate in a back and forth forum all the different virtualization technologies that help make up all the various layers we have on our platform, from simply the Power VM into the VIOS, and then in my space, all the things around SROV, shared Ethernet, hybrid networking, NPIV. So it's been able to really help a lot of our partners and our customers, and that's been great. And I just hope that moving forward, be able to continue to tribute to the new guys that get to co-share this forum.
All right, thanks, Douglas. And so if you have questions, IO kind of related questions, Doug's out there to answer them.
Yep.
Type them in.
I will say that there is a popular question I have been starting to get, and it's around fiber channel. When are we going to see 4x32 and 2x64 fiber channel? Obviously, it's not in the portfolio at this moment in time. It's starting to come out. This is all part of the fiber channel Gen 7 platforms that are being released by various vendors, and we will be there, hoping to be there by year end. So do watch for it, and it will be interesting to see how much more I/O we can get out of those new adapters.
All right. Okay, next up, Vess, and sorry, Vess, I don't know, I missed you there getting on, and I was looking for you, and here you are, already out there. So Vess is our cloud expert. Vess is with Lab Services. He's our cloud expert, and there you go, Vess.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think most everyone here knows who I am. So yeah, like Joe said, I'm in Lab Services. We've been providing services for cloud over the last 12 years, believe it or not, for AIX and Power and everything else on Power as well. Most of that has been on-prem, but over the last 3 years or so, we've been doing Power in the cloud as well, and we've been doing containers along with AIX and everything else. I present a few times, I haven't counted how many. Obviously, as everybody else said, Joe, I mean, this is the VUG has been a key component of the ecosystem, right? And for all of us to connect for the benefit of everyone. So we appreciate it. I don't have anything to show. I'm here to answer any cloud-related questions for Power in general.
Okay, so Power Virtual Server, Power in the Cloud has really grown in the last couple of years, and I've seen just a tremendous amount of effort, anywhere from just moving everything, customers want to move everything to the cloud, to people want to look at DR in the cloud, rather than have some other site somewhere off in the distance that they have to deal with. So it's really grown, and Vess and his team are great with, one, explaining it to customers, and two, helping people to move there for whatever you know, however they're doing it. So.
Yeah, and one last thing, quick thing I'll say is, as Joe suggests, we do have quite a bit of experience now over the last 3 years doing that, and tips and techniques and gotchas and all of that. So by all means, ask any questions about that, but also about Ansible, which is also extremely popular. And then, as I say, we do some work with OpenShift and Cloud Paks as well. So happy to help.
All right. So our next speaker up is Glenn Cornell. You know, I had to ask Glenn what he wanted his expertise to be, because the guy just knows something about everything, it seems, in different ways too. So one of those other experts that goes deep in different ways. So Glenn listed his expertise as IBM Spectrum Scale, used to be GPFS. I know I have a lot of customers that still say GPFS. They still call IBM I AS400. I still call it AS400. It's what it was when I started. So Glenn, do you have something to share? Should I make you a presenter?
Yeah, I did put a couple slides together since, you know, I thought this was a nice capstone to your career here at IBM. And since I was a topic presenter, I could go ahead and kind of take a quick look back. So let's try this right here. I will share my screen. And you tell me if...
I can see it.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there a gray box? Is there a gray box in the way? Oh, here, let me move that out of the way. All right.
I don't see the gray box, but...
Oh, good, good. Well, Joe, like everyone else, I do wish to congratulate you on your next journey, and I'm glad none of it involved computers. So there you go.
So am I.
you get to relax. And thanks for not pegging me as the IBM Systems Director expert. I did wear that hat for a few years. Nigel and I both felt that pain quite a lot. And so, yeah, I'm glad you didn't pick that topic for my last go here. As you said, you know, I've been doing this for a little while, and I thought it would be fun to kind of take a look back. And so when we talk about IBM Spectrum Scale, or as you mentioned, GPFS, you know, where did it start? You know, just a history lesson, or maybe just a reminder for some folks who have been doing this for a while. The product is around. 1997 is when we first announced GPFS version 1. And for those keeping track, that was supported on a version AIX 421. I did have fun looking up the maximum file size and maximum file system size. So 1 terabyte was the maximum file system size. Back in that day, if you had a terabyte of disk on your floor, you were in a special club. They literally did call it the Terabyte Club, and so you could meet with other folks who had big systems like that. But yeah, it's been around like that. But really, it was a couple of years earlier. That was kind of the formation for it, and I can't help stepping out of here without giving a call back, shout out to the good old venerable SP2. As you know, we just recently announced, or well, we didn't announce, but it was the anniversary of the Kasparov Deep Blue contest against a modified SP2 for chess. And so, you know, again, it just kind of shows you the history both in power and in this case in spectrum scale. That was AIX 325, so going even further back. And for folks who do like to, you know, win those trivia games that you play against IBMers or other longtime power and AIX admins, yeah, there was a product before GPFS. It was called PIOFS, and really there was a multimedia server too. So this stuff all started back on SCSI 1 hard drives back in the day. But it has been around for a while. It's been a fun ride. And so when we take a look at things here in 2022. You know, there's good old IBM Spectrum Scale. I know some of my fellow IBMers are on here. We did a lot of work way back in the 90s with Oracle RAC on Spectrum Scale. But nowadays, when it comes to AIX and IBM Spectrum Scale, it's SAS. SAS is really the key driver there, and we can make SAS scream on our power systems. In fact, we're currently in the process of testing SAS in Spectrum Scale with our latest Power 10 and Flash technologies, and we're seeing some really good numbers. Maybe later on we can have Harry come in and talk about the results there. But it's certainly grown over the years. So a lot of additional capabilities, a lot of functions. I'm not going to go through this. I borrowed this slide from our Spectrum Scale folks, since I don't tend to do a lot of Spectrum Scale presentations anymore. But we've grown up. We've added a lot of capabilities. Not only is SAS interesting, you know, I do dabble in Linux as well. I find the containerization support underlying Spectrum Scale for Linux on Power or even x86, you know, is still quite interesting. I like big numbers. Everybody gets to memorize this one. So currently, the maximum architectural file size is around 9 exabytes. And in case you're wondering, it's that huge number listed there. Just kind of fun to take a look at where things started and where things went. It wouldn't be an AIX thing without just kind of mentioning our current support statement of IBM Spectrum Scale in AIX. As we all know, AIX 7.3 just came out here in December. And here in March, they announced new patches and a new release of IBM Spectrum Scale 5.1.3 that supports AIX 7.3. As you might imagine, you know, keeping support for multiple operating systems and Spectrum Scale supports a lot, not just on AIX, but on Linux, on Power and Linux x86, even Linux on Z. As you add new operating system support and technologies, old ones do drop off. So I will point out that AIX 7.1, which itself is technically still in support, the general support for IBM Spectrum Scale with AIX 7.1 is stuck in the long-term support 5.05 stream, which itself is actually going out of support the end of next month. But you can contact TSS and get extended support up to 2 additional years for those AIX 7.1 customers. And if you're still running AIX 6.1 or heaven forbid AIX 5.3, no, I'm sorry, there's just no more support for IBM Spectrum Scale in those old releases.
All right.
I had a random tip.
Okay,
you know, Spectrum Scale is Spectrum Scale is Spectrum Scale pretty much all over the place. But there is kind of one little oddball thing that, you know, folks may have run across. And that's when you're updating the Spectrum Scale code on AIX. You know, of course, we can update file sets without a problem, and many programs do just fine with that. However, in the case of the kernel extension for GPFS or Spectrum Scale or MMFS, as you can see here, it sometimes doesn't unload, and you can try running this MMFS-ENV-U to attempt to kick it off. If it's still there, unfortunately, you will have to do the reboot to reload it. And I thought it'd be fun to, you know, add a picture there. That's I'm in my Redbook residency visiting the old 300 millimeter wafer plant down in Fishkill, and so if anyone can find me, I am in that picture. Any guesses, Joe? No. Oh man,
it's the slim
okay.
one on the right.
No, there I am. I'm right in the middle there. Kind of hard to tell with the whole bunny suit on, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any really old pictures of you, Joe, so I thought I'd put up a really old one of me. So GPFS is announced back in 1994. This young guy was working on it back then, and you know, here I am today with a few more gray hairs, just a few. That's all I had there, Joe.
All right. Well, thanks, Glenn. That was good. You know,
you bet.
As Nigel said when we started this, it was the AIX virtual user group, and actually it was just the central region. It was the middle of the United States is where we started, and now it's kind of branched out. IBM has switched. You know, we went from AIX and Power Systems being how it was so easy to learn back then, and now we've got cloud, we've got Linux and containers and all kinds of new stuff that has since come up. So we changed the name. But we also, back then, there was an IBMI. I got so many requests for people to do IBMI virtual user group. So we actually started an IBMI, and I didn't start it. There was an IBMI expert that's no longer with IBM, that has since moved on. But that lasted for a little while, and then they kind of just fizzled out. So I started pulling in IBMI topics, you know, and a lot of topics really are all Power Systems topics. You know, they're not specifically AIX or one, but I tried to do some IBMI specific topics. And so our next speaker, Dan Sant, and actually we have Dan and Allison, and both Dan and Allison are members of the IBMI offering management group. If you're in IBMI at all, I'm sure you know both of them because they are two of the people within IBMI. So we're going to kind of turn it over to them. And I know Dan is traveling, and Allison said she had to step out for just a few minutes, so I'm not sure if she's in right now. But Dan, are you take over? Do you want to be a presenter, Dan?
Nope, I can just talk. So hello, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
as Joe said, I'm at an airport right now doing my first business trip to see a customer, the first time in over 2 years. So kind of exciting to do it. It's a change, after doing it so many years, then take 2 years off. So, again, looking forward to, doing a briefing for a customer on IBMI. So I'll again thank Joe for everything he's done, his years of service, and including IBMI. We try to include AIX and Linux and everything Power. So it's good to, we are one of the operating systems that runs on Power. So lots of great things that we're doing. So not really any tips, but more just, suggestions, I guess, making sure that, concurrency of staying current of our operating systems. We do twice yearly updates of our operating systems. So if you're at 7.3 and 7.4, we're doing technology refresh to provide new things. Power 10 came out at the end of the fall, so you need to be at least 7.3 or 7.4. So for those customers that might be at older IBMI releases, you're missing some cool functions, and you're also kind of limiting yourself for new things that we may be announcing in the future for IBMI releases. And then from the system administration, I just thought I'd highlight, I was doing a briefing yesterday, a virtual briefing to a customer, and we were talking about ways that, working with your systems. And of course, AS400 way back when, green screen terminals was how you access. We still have, 50/50 green screen, but we really enhanced, we have 2 core products that we've delivered quite a few functions to work with and manage your system. Access Client Solutions, or ACS, is kind of a replacement for that thick product that you downloaded on your PC or your laptop. It's a lightweight. It's got lots of feature functions on it, and we do updates, twice a year. So hopefully you're using that. If you need to bring up a green screen, if you need to run SQL scripts, you want to look at print output, really look at and encourage you to look at Access Client Solutions. And then last fall, with our TRs that I mentioned, we introduced a new product, our updated product called IBM Navigator for I, or we're lovingly calling it New Nav, because we kind of changed the plumbing, changed the interface, made it more modern, kind of made it more personality type capabilities. So we've done a few webinars ourselves, on New Nav and kind of promoting that to our customers. So if you're, on newer version of IBMI and still using the old Navigator interface, we'd really strongly suggest you look at the new Navigator interface. You can, it's just a different port that you connect to, and that's where we're putting all of our future investments. So all the future announcements you're going to see from the usability and manageability, of the operating system are going to be in the new Navigator interface and the Access Client Solution. So that's kind of my little plug. Thanks for your time, Joe.
All right, thanks, Dan. And like Dan said, he's in the airport, he's traveling, so I really appreciate him taking the time to out to be with us and be part of this. And Allison is, I think she did step away for a little bit, but she'll be back. So if you have IBMI questions, put them in the question pane, and we'll get to those as well. So next up on our list, Steve Finis. Steve is one of our high availabilities disaster recovery experts, and I know he's eager to share a tip with us. So Steve, should I make you a presenter? Do you have charts, or you just?
No, I'm not going to do charts, Joe. I thought I would just, and Joe, enjoy your retirement, and probably, you never know, probably see you around, since we're kind of in generally the same area.
Yep.
And I thought instead what I would do, just, because, we do, when I say we, at least on the AIX side, it's myself and Mike Herrera, so we do briefings quite regularly, and the same I do on the IBMI side. And so I really don't need to go through that here. What I'd rather say is, what kind of things are we seeing? Well, the Power HA brand we created back in 2008. It's been around now 14 years. And a huge amount has changed. And I can tell you, Power HA on AIX is a very solid product. When we started on this journey, and when they had the first NPS scores, that Net Promoter Scores, which rank your value, let's say, on a normalized scale of up to a 100, actually each client does 1 to 10, but regardless, it was in the 50s. It is now in the mid 80s, which is testament to the kind of work we've done on a whole series of things, under the covers to really make the system robust, and can I say the word foolproof? Is, we really don't want customer mistakes to cause issues, and so there's been a heavy focus on that, and it's paying off. It has paid off. We re-architected the product with the customer or cluster-aware AIX and with the UI. And if there's one thing I would say to everybody out there that's either running Power HA and by the way, I'm seeing a trend where now we're getting more and more clients coming back and saying they want to look at it. But the UI, we've got a fantastic UI. And at a minimum, if you want to use command line, fine, but you ought to be using the UI for monitoring your clusters. That next product is the VM Recovery Manager, which is the equivalent to VMware. And that has been growing incredibly fast. I mean, I'm talking in some quarters like 900%. The thing is just taking off. And the reason is because it really addresses simple, disaster recovery, but also data center VM management. And it has a place. And, we knew that when we proposed it and started working the project. And the development team is working on it continuously. Again, focuses on robustness, focuses on, let's make sure to minimize user errors and things like this. And each release, it gets stronger and stronger. It's going quite well. And then over on the Power HA side, I should say, well, in in general, I'll first say that, let me just say that the trend that I'm observing is with the flash system storage from IBM, I see a very large movement to storage, and then the client naturally wants to know about storage replication. So like last quarter for Power HAI, or I'm sorry, last year it was 25% growth year to year. And it's, and then the other one is, an alternative to VM Recovery Manager and IBMI's full system replication. Why some customers would use that? Probably due to the fact they may not be comfortable with VIOS yet, perhaps. But it's another option. So the full system replication toolkit and VM Recovery Manager are first cousins. It's just that the full system replication toolkit is dedicated only to IBMI and only to IBM storage. But that whole area of storage-based solutions in the IBMI world is, I would call it a white space. It's growing very rapidly. And I think, that's it. Stay tuned for those for upcoming releases, and you're going to see a lot more action. And if you want to have briefings, of course, Mike Herrera, he's going to talk here in a few minutes. And then likewise, myself, I'm doing them quite regularly. And that's all I have to say. So thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Steve. And I'll just reiterate that both Steve and Mike are great. If you have questions or you need some, discussion on setting up the high availability disaster recovery, what's the best way or whatever, they're both fantastic. So thanks, Steve. So next, one of the top, I'll say, topics that is popular in the VUG webinars has always been performance. It seems like everybody's concerned about performance. They're looking at performance. They want to know how to make their systems perform better. And we've had, of course, Nigel with Enmon, and actually we've had several speakers talk about performance. One of our performance experts is Steve Nasipany. And that's what Steve's deep knowledge goes into. And so we're going to turn it over here and see if Steve has some performance tip to give us. Steve, do you want me to make you a presenter?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
I get it in there.
Okay,
I can see it,
Steve.
Yeah, thanks. So first, I'd like to say very honored to be here on this last session with Joe. Just known him for a long time, done a lot of great work with him, and hopefully helped his customers a lot. I did some bugs, but I probably hold the record for the worst bug ever, as I was so nervous about the presentation. I went into an IBM facility and their Wi-Fi was down. And then I went to the Starbucks. I was trying to connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi, and then I was trying to do it on my phone. And it was about an hour's worth of me dropping in and dropping out. And so it's probably hold that record for that, but still had a good time. Gonna miss Joe a lot, and good luck on his retirement.
Nigel said something about there was never any Mr. Topaz. I did own Topaz for a while I was in development back in the era after it had been developed, and I remember always hearing about this British guy back in the 90s, and then he had some things he wanted and things we wanted, and then we talked about merging, and then the lawyers got involved, and I got afraid of it. And then I think the guy who probably should be Mr. Topaz is probably Luke Smulders, who was the performance architect, who's the guy who went and got the lawyers and herded everyone and got everything together and got it all merged in. And that was a big project. So I'd give him the credit for that. I can say that Glenn was mentioning the Genkex command, which you probably never heard of. You could probably call me Mr. Genkex, because I did own that tool also, and I used to have to do a lot of work on Genkex and GenLD and GenKLD to get everything working with up to when we went to 64-bit twice in AIX 4.3 and AIX 5.1, because a lot of changes had to be made in some of those tools. And so those performance tools you've never heard of or you don't like, you could say that that's what I am. I've got just some quick slides here on just the collateral available that's out there. A lot of people don't ever seem to know this, and of course, IBM, being good with its web-facing front ends, decides to, and its content strategy, decides to change its links every year and make it difficult for you. So I've got these updated, and these were working as of this morning. So the blue links here, you can click. I would say so a lot of great resources out there, a lot of Power 10 stuff out there. Other presentations may cover benchmarks and other stuff like that, but so I'm not going to really talk about benchmarks or that much in detail. But go look at those resources. Go look at the Power community. I did see somebody mentioning Chris Gibson besides Jackie. Chris Gibson used to have a pretty good website, but I couldn't find the current web link for his wherever he's posting stuff, so I don't have that link in here. And I just had to show this chart. It's not out yet. This is a thing, all our Power 10 scale out education, the leaders there have got these cool bus diagrams that they've created, but they're all in PDF and they won't give them to us. So I went out and I spent some time, actually a lot of time, trying to make this pretty dual shift module Power 10 scale out bus thing here. So this kind of graphic here, and if anybody sort of wants it, any of the other speakers wants it, I can give it to them, but it'll cost a beer. So, watch the VUG space, because soon we'll be able to talk about these scale out systems in more detail. Quick coverage of our perf stuff in the Power environment, Power 10 environment, and just seeing the uplift between the different SMT levels, and just want to reiterate how important SMT 8 is in Power 9 and Power 10. If you're not using SMT 8, you're going to be leaving a lot of capacity of the core on the table, and it's not something you can get back with that's designed to go 8 ways, and it works really well, and the uplift has been huge for Power 9 and Power 10. Something I debated whether talking about, I know Earl's doing some education here, so I thought maybe I'd kneecap him if I got in before him, but and so I did. A lot of my old education was teaching about how dispatching worked in shared pools back in the day. Those of you familiar with that, you'd know about raw throughput mode, where it's very aggressively using all the SMT threads, the first SMT threads. So if you have 12 virtual processors, it's going to use all 12 processors first SMT thread before it goes back and starts using the other SMT threads. This is wasteful. It's hard. It isn't good for consolidation. It isn't good for when you migrate. And a lot of environments where you have overcommitted virtual processor counts, then you kind of struggle with this. And we've all spent years trying to educate and push people and cajole people to, resize their virtual processors, to do all sorts of things to try to get to, use shared pools more efficiently. A buddy of mine named Dean Burdick, who used to work at IBM, he created an alternative dispatch mechanism called scaled throughput. This was supposed to become the default in Power 8, and they kind of wimped out and decided not to do it. He didn't, but the powers that be. They talked about it again in Power 9, but because, you know, they didn't do it in Power 8, they didn't do it in Power 9. Well, for shared mode, they did enable this function as the default for shared partitions, and this is a good thing because those of you who have never done your virtual processor resizings, you don't have to worry about it as much. You can be wasteful, and this will fix it for you. So the good thing. And the other good thing about this is you can still tell those, those people who use, those partitions and virtual machines in your environment that they can keep their virtual processor counts. And that you just don't have to tell them that things have sort of changed underneath the covers. If you're running dedicated mode, you're not going to notice any change. And so just basically what this does is you're going to get the same, very good performance, better performance than you need in 99% of the cases. And you're going to use less cores. So it's a good decision that they finally went and did this, in my opinion. I will send this deck to Joe and them that they can post this if you want that. You want to look at SMT threads, look at mpstat -v. Just not going to go into detail on this. This is a tool I use. And I want to give a shout out on the Linux side to Damir Rubik, who, Linux always reported metric SMT and physical consumption wrong on Linux and Power, and he went and got it fixed. And so there's information here on that. And then I just want to point out the most important things, SVMon, another tool that I owned. This a great tool. It's got all this function in it, can answer all sorts of questions you have that you can't get easily anywhere else. It's like you could do this in KDB, but it's a lot simpler to do it in SVMon to get this level of detail. And then just the only AIX memory metric you ever need to really know about or understand is computational memory. And if you don't know what that is, then look at that link and get some education there. You don't need to be looking at any other metric. And if you need more education on this, then you can talk to that guy named Earl. So he can give you training on all this stuff. And just Linux to show Linux. This slide didn't come out that well, but Linux has got some of the same function, for being able to figure out some of these things now. So just an example there to be friendly to the Linux on Power folks. Oh, and I got to click through. I animated it unknowingly. VIOS, just wanted to be a shout out to all the stuff that's gone to the virtual IO server. If you haven't kept up or read all the material on the VIOS 3 version, I see a lot of people have done the migrations, but have not really converted from shared Ethernet or have not gone to the new tech. You really should delve into that because they have just been doing incredible work on the virtual IO server with all this technology and all this performance stuff that has fixed all these things that used to, cause us so many problems. So dive into that. And then I just got a last slide to talk about, people complain about, our CVEs and some of our defect, the issues that have come out, support issues that have come out in recent times. And I just want to sort of give you a magnitude of the scale of the differences between what you get with AIX and what you get with Linux when it comes to CVEs. And so, yes, we've had a few big ones, but one thing, if you look at a lot of these on the hypervisor that exist, only one of them, they aren't issues where one virtual machine can go get access to another virtual machine through Power VM. There's one where another virtual machine can trigger or cause problems for another virtual machine, but none of them are about getting access to another virtual machine or LPAR, which is sort of what you see, in these other environments a lot. So just sort of food for thought. And that's it for me. I'm gonna miss you, Joe, and I hope we'll get a chance to party with you at some time down the road, as I will be supporting customers up in your area.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve. Tools that people have never heard of. My first job at IBM was to work on Token Ring. I think it was only ever used in IBM. You can still see Token Ring adapters plugins in some of the walls of the old offices. And since actually you and I think maybe Dan mentioned it too, Power 10. As you said, we really haven't talked a lot about Power 10. As everybody should know, that the 1080 was announced last year. More Power 10 will be rolling out this year. Nothing's been announced yet, so we can't talk about it, specific dates or anything, but everybody knows it's going to be rolled out. And we've actually shared some of the Power 10 stuff, and like Steve showed there with his little chart. So that's coming. It'll be exciting. Ross and Brian will surely have some sessions on that when they're announced and brief everybody on that as soon as they're there.
Yeah, coming. Yep.
Anything else? Okay. Our next speaker, Ralph Schmidt Danner. Ralph is our Oracle expert, and you'll hear from him. Nice, strong German accent. I had actually in my career before I was as a technical specialist, I was in development. I spent 2 years in Germany on an international assignment with IBM. Another highlight of my career when I was in development, and so much fun living in Germany. So it's always fun to talk with Ralph. Not that I can talk German with him, I just, especially anymore, don't remember enough of it. But so Ralph's gonna talk to us about some Oracle, give us his Oracle tip. And Ralph, I'm pretty sure that you have charts, so I'm just finding you here to make you presenter. And there you go. Should be passing presenter privileges to you now, Ralph. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. First, I want to reiterate what great job you did with the VUG over all of these many years. I know that finding subject matter experts willing to share their skills and knowledge on these kind of calls is not easy because they're typically in very high demand and have little time. So you did a really great job in putting together meaningful and, in my opinion, very interesting, even for an IBM internal guy, set of material, skills to learn and actually use in real life. So I hope you can see the screen.
Yep.
We started out with Mr. Enmon, so Nigel. I'm the kind of within at least the IBM Americas, the Mr. Oracle within IBM. And you have my contact information if you have questions there. One thing I want to point out, IBM decided to do another renaming of our team. We are now called Advanced Technology Group. If you heard before, it was Washington Systems Center. Before that, it was Advanced Technology Skills or Services. So today we are called Advanced Technology Group, and we are not covering only Oracle, but we're also covering SAP, storage, and SAS. So what I want to do today is really, it's a small tip or something to think about. If you have a workload and wonder, okay, why is that workload not running faster on my computer? Especially, for example, if you have an Oracle batch job, heavily single-threaded, you scratch your head, okay, why is it not running faster? Is it constrained? Is it easy to figure out? So I'm using Topaz Enmon in this context. We have Topaz Enmon. If you go to top, it shows percent CPU used per process. Great. So you think about, okay, yeah, you would expect as a normal guy, at least also with older AX releases, that those processes show as 100% busy in Topaz Enmon if they are CPU/thread constrained. So I have a single threaded workload, should show 100%. Yeah. But if I look at my Topaz Enmon output, I only see a peak up to 32%. So I decide, okay, let's have a quick, very sophisticated test program, which is really a CPU eater. And you can see that this small while loop in the conch shell really leads to about 100% of CPU usage for one thread. So now I'm looking at, okay, what numbers do I actually get with different SMT levels? On the right, you can see, and it doesn't change, whatever SMT level you are on, that we have one logical processor being at 100% busy. if I look at the Topaz, so the Topaz Nmon, the top column CPU used for SMT1, I get close to 100% expected. Whereas SMT2, it's only reporting 50%. With SMT4, it only reports 44.1. With SMT8, it only reports 32.8. And that is for exactly the same workload at 100% of one logical processor or execution thread. So you really, if you want to understand, is my process CPU constrained, you really have to know those numbers to get an idea. So it gets even more interesting. The numbers I showed before were collected on a Power 9 server, so Power 9 LPAR. Does that change with Power 8 or Power 10? So I did a bit of searching. I found in a Power 8 server, I found a Power 10, and using the same sophisticated test workload, what will be the results? So as you can see here, there will be no money involved here, but any bets? Think about it. What would you think? And to make it easy, this is the result. So the percentages reported are not only depending on SMT mode, but they're also depending on the technology your LPAR is running on. So I thought I shared this observation tidbit with you, and my suggestion is, if you have an environment where you're not exactly sure what the number is, run this small while loop, look at Topaz Nmon, search for this control process, and it will tell you, okay, for example, you are on a Power 10 in SMT4, 37.1%. If that is what is reported for the process in top of Topaz Nmon, that process cannot run any faster if it's single-threaded. One other quick slide I shared a while back, also in the context of SMT, and this is Oracle specific. I'm highlighting here that how Oracle allocates CPU cycles to its own processes or to other workload, it believes it's not. It's the Oracle engine specific, is SMT specific. So I did a test with SMT8, SMT2, SMT1, fixed workload, a small swing bench with some reasonable workload. And if you look at the top right, where I show the Oracle Enterprise Manager view, you see how this green shaded area changes, which is the instance foreground CPU as reported by Oracle, changes without the database actually, or the database workload being changing. It's the same workload all the time. The only thing I changed is the SMT level. And you can see that only with SMT1, you get the correct report, because there's nothing else running on my system using CPU. And Oracle only with SMT1 correctly reflects that at that point, everything as used as CPU is for Oracle processes. With SMT1, it's off, and it gets most off with SMT8. So if you're running an Oracle database and your DBA tells you, oh, I'm running Oracle Enterprise Manager, and it tells me the database uses only a relatively low percentage, there's lots of other workload, you can tell them, Oracle does not really report correctly in that regard. Oracle is evaluating to fix that in the future. I have not yet, I don't know if and when that exactly that will happen. And just as short final slides here, if you're still on Power 8, you really want to evaluate Power 10, where you get about 2.5x improvement for an Oracle OLTP workload, with 50% fewer Oracle licenses required. You have the details on the slide, and those will be uploaded. For a business intelligent workload, on the bottom left, you see 11GR2, Power 8. We then just move that to Power 10. We get 38% fast execution. with 43% fewer Oracle licenses, means cores. We then upgrade to 1911, still with row format, and we get about 2.3x performance with 27 cores on Power 10 compared to 48 on Power 8. And if you utilize Oracle in memory for the same query set, you can get nearly 80x the performance as compared to the Power 8. And if you go back to one of my older slides where I also showed the in-memory for Power 8, you will see that Power 10 provides a significant additional bump in that performance because of the much higher memory bandwidth available in Power 10 servers. And just to give the other speakers after me enough time, I'll stop here. I hope you found that useful. And Joe, we will really miss you going forward, not only with VUG, but also with all your other skills you have provided to IBM in the technical community.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you. And thanks for presenting that. As Ralph said, he is Mr. Oracle. If you have Oracle questions, he is the guy to go to, and also does great presentations and helping people figure out what the best thing to do is. So another expert to utilize. So our next speaker up is Earl Jew. You know, I met Earl a long time before he spoke on the VUG, and I saw him at TechUse. And if anybody goes deep, you know, all our experts can go very deep into whatever field their expertise is, but Earl drags you down there with him into the depths of performance and how AIX works. And if you're not careful, I always worry. I walk into TechUse and he's presenting and he goes, you know, several sessions that people's heads are going to explode. So Earl just knows the depths of it, and he's just so willing to share it. It's just amazing. So Earl, do you have some great tips for us or something you want to share? Do you want me to make you a presenter? And you're muted, Earl.
You know,
There you
it's very unusual that I'm not heard. Yes, please make me a presenter. Thank you.
All right, there you go. And I'll just say while he's setting this up, Earl's part of the lab services. So he's somebody that you can bring on site, and I know I've talked to several customers that have done this. They all absolutely loved it. Bring him on site to go through systems, and not just help, you know, fix them or tune them, but to help you do it and to teach you how to do it.
I've got another one after this, actually. I'll do it today.
Okay. Well, thank you. Everyone's given such a fine tribute to Joe already. I want to tell you, I started speaking on the VUG back in 2009, and as many sessions as I've given, I have not caught up with Nigel. Just going to still try to do that. Thank you for mentioning me, Steve Nasipany. And he's my deep science performance counterpart who used to work in development. This session here is something I started writing in January because I was writing 6 sessions for TechU, and then something happened to TechU. But anyways, maybe some of you know, it literally takes me almost full-time 9 months to write my curriculum when I present at TechU. Here are the 6 sessions I laid out for TechU 2022, which is not happening, but anyways, something else hopefully will. I will continue to write these. Those are my 6 sessions. And we're going to talk about this here as quickly as possible, establishing the theme, Power 10 exploitation. Shout out to Nigel. He allowed me access to VM114 on his Power 10 last year. And he was stunned because I had to hit him on Slack and ask him, how do I reboot this LPAR? Poor Nigel was completely stunned that Mr. Earl Jew did not know how to reboot his LPAR. He was good enough not to call me and cuss me out, but he was really stunned. No, all I do is performance tuning. I don't know how to do anything else. Now, the strange word here is this. What do I mean by exploitation? See the title of my session. What do I mean by exploitation? Well, I'm going to dare to do it. Exploitation is realizing more economic value with greater productivity, a huge leap going forward on Power 10. And what I mean by this is I dare to show you how to get more economic value out of the differential between Power 9 going to Power 10. Eliciting more from less is the basis of economic value. This session will be posted up there. I am stunned to be presenting it. I thought I wouldn't get to this stage today. Also exploitation, wasting less of an allocated resource, using more of an allocated resource. Duh, we all understand this. This one might be different. Trading performance for efficiency, efficiency for performance. I have definitions for these numbers. I think you probably saw them last time I spoke. And the big one, sizing by what the workload uses, reducing what the workload doesn't use. All these are the traits underlying deriving more economic value, and it all comes down to this. I believe it might be the first time anyone has ever attempted to show you how to derive the most economic value from our technology. When we sell power, we always tell you, our core is so powerful, you need fewer cores, and thus you pay for fewer licenses. I hope that's still true. And I have seen that it is still true, if and only if you build your LPARs so that you can derive that value. SMT8 is wonderful. It's more wonderful if you don't just give it one thread for every SMT8 virtual CPU on a core. It's more wonderful if you can give 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 threads to execute at SMT8 instead of what we've been doing, 1 or 2 threads and kernel coming up to SMT4. Strategic considerations. What do I mean by this? I mean a framework of high-level concepts. This session is about strategic considerations underlying how to derive more economic value, which brings us to the title of the session. And I'm going to give you the framework. The framework is kind of empty at the moment, but we'll go through it. Number 1, priority CPU time, the total entitlement on a server. The total ENT on a server, you got 16 cores on your server, your total entitlement is the CPU time of 16 cores. It's the most limited resource. I think we got it. If you don't have enough memory, oh well, you should have bought it with more memory. If you did buy enough memory, your tightest resource will be priority CPU time. And thus, if that is so on your system, judicious allocation, how you parse out your entitlement is a key economic consideration, given that it is the most limited resource. Next, acknowledge the greater productivity of Power 10. Most of us wonder why our clock cycles are getting slower and slower, and yet our throughput and performance is gaining greater capability. Well, not understanding how we run faster, how we run better, is a real mystery for most. We will get into a Power 10 white paper on why and how we get better performance at Power 10. And we have to evolve our practice to exploit this greater capability. I need to say it. Our best practices that we've been living with started with the Power P570 a long time ago. And in those days, if you had 16 cores each at SMT2, your range of logical CPUs is from 0 to 32 logical CPUs. Everybody at Power 10, that total count of logical CPUs is now 1,920 logical CPUs in the server max, Power 10 E1080. Best practices for 32 logical CPUs don't apply well when you have 1,920 logical CPUs, and that's where I come in to be as disruptive as possible to evolve our practices to a greater scale. That's what's missing. Collect the reality of processing. Basically, that means run my script. And of course, Patrice has been very instrumental in making this script a better script. Thank you, Patrice. Collect the reality of processing. Review the numbers. You collect the numbers and you don't look at them. No, review the numbers. Try to understand them. Hopefully my guidance is useful. But the big step is this: believing what you see. If you don't believe what you see, it's kind of hard to tune by what you see. So when I say tune by the reality of processing, I really mean collect, review, and believe what you see. And the reason why you tune by the reality processing is tuning by the reality processing is more specific to a large-scale LPAR ranging from 1 to 1920 logical CPUs versus the initial best practices set Power 4 SMT2 with 16 cores and a P570. Hey, I'm keeping it real. I know it hurts, but we need to be more specific with our tuning because best practices was not designed for such a huge range of scalability. 3 classes of execution CPU time, 3 classes of unused CPU time. What? One thing most of us know, our workloads actively are running the hypervisor, kernel, and user. And for unused CPU time, we need to distinguish the wait processes of the kernel, the operation of hypervisor seeding, and then virtual CPU folding. And those are really key concepts. That's the entire framework. I know I'm speaking fast. Let's start all over again. Realizing the greatest economic value with greater productivity and understanding what's most limited. Of course, that also is combined with the greater capability of technology. What is this greater capability of technology? Well, I got a session for that. I started writing it already. This, you can read that abstract there, but this is a white paper. I did it for Power 8, I did it for Power 9. I base my tuning tactics and understanding on the capability of technology. That's called tuning. Tune by the reality. What's going on inside of a Power 10? Well, that's what Nigel gave me access to, VM114 on his Power 10. I have a whole session on illustrating numbers of how Power 10 processes. Of course, I rigged up an artificial workload to make it more visible. Anyways, next, breaking down unused CPU time into wait processes, seeding, and virtual CPU folding. I have a whole session on understanding this, because this is the inverse of productive CPU time. And then finally, tying it together, understanding the classes of CPU time and how we can derive more economic value from it. That word is called scrunching, okay? Yeah, I make up new words. Scrunching with VPM throughput mode, and we get into this deep. We've seen introduction of it already, but this is where we can derive greater throughput versus responsiveness, and Power 10 is upping the game by defaulting to VPM throughput mode 2. And finally, getting to the deep, big propeller head, deeper science session, we get into how to monitor the hypervisor. Now, our hypervisor is confidential and it's undocumented, but AIX does give us insight into the hypervisor numbers. If AIX shows us the hypervisor numbers, it cannot be confidential, and I have a session on that. Hopefully this will be posted up there. Hey, that is the entire framework. Sorry for speaking so fast, but this is recorded. Joe, thank you for contributing to all of our careers, all the attention you've given it to us, how many thousands of lives you've touched, as well as enhancing my career. Thank you much. And we wish you having a whole lot of mosquito bites and a whole lot of canoeing trips. And
gee, thanks, Earl.
And of course,
yeah,
your session evaluations. And thank you.
All right. You know, as usual, I've gotten way more out of this than I think I've given, and I really appreciate it. And Earl, you've been a great speaker. And all those sessions, keep them. I'm pretty sure that Ross and Brian will be contacting you to help out in the future and giving you a chance to present that material, because it certainly would be useful to everybody to hear.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great time.
All right, so we have one speaker left on our list. Hopefully we're still getting questions in and answering questions, so everybody can still put in questions for our experts with this. Mike Herrera. Mike is another high availability disaster recovery kind of, you know, when all this started back when, Mike was really on the AIX side, and a great guy to get to know, and has really helped me out a lot over my years with customers. So, Mike, do you want me to make you a presenter, or are you just going to speak a little bit?
I'm just going to speak. I appreciate it.
All right.
So just like everybody else, I wanted to say thanks. You know, sometimes you hear that somebody's going to retire and you're kind of counting the days. And in this instance, it's kind of the opposite. So congrats, enjoy your time off. As far as the technical content, I know Steve already kind of covered some of the HA things. Being that it's an HA world or topic, I guess you had to have two. But I just figured I would tell you the kinds of things that I'm working on. I'm still testing a lot with the Power HA software. I'm doing testing with a lot of the one-off configs like DS8000 Hyperswap. GLVM, I've been testing with Ralph actually with Oracle ASM configurations in synchronous and asynchronous mode. We're playing around with the latest releases of AIX, the latest releases of the cluster software, as well as VM Recovery Manager, which is actually consuming a lot of the time. So just like the other guys over the years, I picked up a short name, like they used to call me Mr. Power HA. Now I do a lot of VMR stuff, so I suspect that it's going to be Mr. VMR at some point. But still working on a lot of the content, a lot of the testing. I discover stuff all the time. I give the feedback to the development team, and we try to come up with fixes. The tip that I'll leave you guys with is if you guys run into issues, definitely shoot out a note. I know a lot of you guys have over the years. I'm still responding to stuff on the side. And the reason I say that is not so much to kind of put me on the hook. I try to help out, you know, as soon as I can, if I have the cycles or if I have the knowledge. But I also get the information and roll it into like best practice type stuff. So the type of pitches that we do in like bug seminars or the tech view type sessions, we do take the use cases and say, hey, to help other guys, be on the lookout for these types of things. So definitely continue to share that info, whether it's directly sending emails to me or taking advantage of a lot of the forums like in LinkedIn. There's one for Power HA. There's one for VM Recovery Manager. Or I think it's under the older name, the Geographically Dispersed Resiliency, but it's still there. And they're still sharing a lot of intellectual capital, but some of the outstanding issues that you may run into, it's definitely worthwhile sharing just because it helps out the whole team. As far as any other line items, I'm kind of playing around with some of the things that I find interesting. Obviously, the hybrid deploys with our term licensing. Now we can run Power HA in the cloud. That's why we were kind of experimenting a lot with GLVM, seeing some of the new features. Are they truly as good as they say they are? So I've got some findings there that I'm sharing with the development team. Options that we've had for a couple releases, like the ability to have the cluster software, if you're using Storewise storage or IBM Flash system, automatically perform backups to the cloud. It'll back up your data into cloud object storage. And then today, manually, you can restore that data. But they're doing enhancements in the upcoming releases where it'll kind of be automated. So leveraging the graphical user interface that Steve mentioned, you'll basically be able to point and click and do restores of your data. I'm trying to talk the development team into allowing you to not only back up to existing cluster members, but allowing you to restore those data backups onto standalone servers. So like with VM Recovery Manager today, you have the ability to perform non-disruptive failover testing, right? Where it'll, at the time that you initiate the operation, flash off, and it'll automatically create a clone. So clients really appreciate the ability to non-disruptively test. From the Power HA side, if we can have it not only pull the backups, but if you can deploy those backups into another server, whether it's locally or remote, since it's stored in the cloud, you could take advantage of that feature in a standalone box and do testing, validate that the data is there, or not actually affect prod when you're basically playing off of that copy that you forked off. So things like that. Beyond that, I think that's kind of the gist of what I had to cover. Joe, I really appreciate having had the opportunity to present. And then to the extended team, feel free to reach out if you guys have any issues as they pertain to the Power HA or the VM Recovery Manager offerings.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And, you know, I wish I could take some credit for having redundant high availability speakers. It just sort of happened that way, but that was a good catch. So I'm pretty happy. We actually made it through all of our speakers. And it's interesting, you know, all these people have spoke before. Everybody's pretty amazing at sharing their expertise with the VUG community. I thought it was interesting. Nigel spoke 18 times. I didn't even realize it was that many. But you know, Nigel's been one of the first, I think, speakers that I lined up and has offered to talk on various topics, which has been very helpful and always has done a great job. So pretty amazing there. And I'm sure you'll hear from all of them some more. Nice. All right, so we've got, you know, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. If people have anything that they want to share in the last minutes, people have questions. I'm just going to put up our speakers again.
Yeah, Joe, we've had some great questions, and of course, Brian and I will be following up on these. We've actually have some help, and so we'll get all these answers and get all this posted. But yeah, great questions and great comments too about you, Joe. So.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to make this about me. I appreciate all the comments. Thank you, everybody. Like I said, it's been my honor and privilege to work with such talented people and such helpful people. So it's been wonderful.
Joe, is Allison still on?
I think
I'm
so,
here.
Allison. Yep.
I'm here.
Did you want to give her a couple minutes to end off? Because I know what I see someone else is asking.
Yeah. Allison, you want to take a couple minutes? Do you have any tips or anything IBMI related you want to share?
Well, Dan and I had planned, and he covered the most current things right at the moment. So I just wanted to mention that I was attending, but Dan covered the key things that we wanted to talk about. So thank you for that opportunity, but I think Dan got it covered.
Okay, thanks, Douglas, for letting me know that,
Yep.
and thank you, Allison. And I saw that you been answering questions out
Yep.
there, Allison. I appreciate that. Good deal.
And Joe, everybody wants to see your face before you go.
Oh shoot! I don't know if I
You're
can.
still in your pajamas, working at home, probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but they're IBM pajamas.
There you go. I wish I had little IBM pajamas. I should have at least worn my my VUG T-shirt today, and I didn't think to put that on.
It's Nigel here. I think the best comment was, thank you very much for helping all our careers and letting us pay the bills for nearly a lifetime. Thank you very much, Jane.
Yeah, good deal.
You know, one of the things that the IBMers know about Joe, that you guys out in the customer base may not realize, but Joe is you know, he helps the customer, but he helps IBMers too. All these guys on the phone and gals on the phone who have been working with Joe over the years. He's just an amazing guy. He'll give up his own time to help his fellow IBMers. We have something in IBM called Blue Points, and it's kind of like an internal reward. And so I honestly think that part of the big reason Joe is retiring is he's got so many Blue Points, he has to retire. So
yeah, I could live off of Blue Points.
No, I'll tell you what, Joe, it's been a pleasure working with you. You've done a great job with this thing, and we're looking forward to keeping it going. So, you know, thanks for everything, buddy.
Thanks, Ross, and I'm knowing this is handed off into good hands, and that you and Brian will keep this going. And you know, we talked about TechUs. We're not really sure what's happening there. Maybe there's not going to be an official TechU, but probably I just think that IBM's going to be doing something. I heard maybe they're rolling them into Think, but I haven't heard anything about what's happening in 2022. So I think the VUG sessions are going to be even more important, and I'm sure you'll keep them going strong.
Joe, did you make that piece of furniture over your left shoulder?
Over my left shoulder, I did. Yes, that cabinet back there.
Very good.
Made that a long time ago.
Nice.
One of the things I'm going to get into, and I thought about putting some pictures of fishing or something in here. I just get a chance to put any up there, but yeah, a lot more woodworking and fishing to come.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Joe, I was impressed that we mentioned 3 of the 4 flavors of AIX during this call. AIX on RS6000, AIX on PS2, AIX on RT, but no one mentioned AIX 370. So I guess those folks out there.
Even before my time, Glenn. Maybe not before yours.
Hey, what about AIX on the old HP, the old Intel Itaniums? I remember I was a ISV at one point, and there was talk about that. So there's another platform that.
Monterey, yes, that was a.
I don't think we ever
project
released
in
Monterey. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
I saw
lots of
boxes.
history. And actually, IBM, I think I started with IBM the year after the AS400 was released, right? So IBM. So I was 1 year late to get in on that. Of course, I started in Rochester, Minnesota, which was the birthplace for the AS400 and IBM. So it's been a lot of fun to be here. So we are at the bottom of our time. Let me take this a minute here and say again, thank you to to all our speakers and actually everybody that's spoken for the VUG. Like I said, it's successful because of them. People don't show up to hear me talk; they show up to hear people with the expertise talk. And you guys and all the speakers have really made this what it is. And I thank you, sincerely thank you. And I thank everybody that's come, all the VUG community, all our customers. We wouldn't be IBM here without you customers. And the VUG was started to educate customers so that you'd be better at your jobs and want to continue using Power. And I hope that keeps going. So thank you so much to all our customers and our business partners that help us out. I have worked almost exclusively with business partners the last few years, and got some great business partners out there. So thanks to everybody. I appreciate it. I plan on having a great retirement, and I'll always have fond memories of IBM and all of you.
All right, Joe. Thanks,
Joe.
sir. Yep.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. So long, everyone.